Hey, Emily, if you can hear me, we can't hear you right now.
Great, thanks, Brian. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great, okay. We're just trying to figure out why Bartek has a presentation up on the screen. Oh, it just showed up.
Yeah, I was pausing the screen.
That's fine. Okay, great. Okay, so we are live streaming. We are unmuted, everyone. So we are broadcasting live to Airbag. So, John, whenever you're ready.
Okay, we will have some guests here from related to the new zoning proposal. And I know there's a time problem with them, so we want them to go first. So I think we'll rearrange the agenda a little bit. So we'll do the public comments after the presentation.
Hey, Phil,
And
come on in.
if nobody has any objections to that.
Well, first, can I read my thing? 'Cause we're
Yeah,
presenting,
should
and
do
we just
that.
have a meeting to order, and then I think before you ask for feedback from members, we should do that.
Yeah. Now let's call the meeting order. Oh, here's Paul. Phil is here.
And let's see, let's say the time. It's 4:03 on Wednesday, 11th. Hi, everybody, I'm Emily Flynn, I'm the chair, but I just have because we have a bunch of people on Zoom tonight, which we welcome, I just want to read some of our public meeting language. So I just want to ask the members of the public to press and remain muted and off camera for the length of the meeting, except for the public comment period. And as staff liaison, I reserve the right to mute anyone who unmutes themselves. I reserve the right to lock and pause the meeting to eject anyone who has behaved inappropriately. I'm sure that's not going to happen. I just want to say that at the beginning so that if my personal value is everyone has to treat everyone else with respect. So I just want to make that out. All right, thank you, John. So we're doing all sorts of-
Okay, with that, I do want to rearrange the agenda a little bit so that we can get the consultants and so forth in and out.
Great.
We'll turn that over.
Okay, I appreciate that. So my name is Bartek Starguy. I'm the Director of Housing Initiatives for the City of Kingston. I also have Amy Groves on Zoom from Dover Cole.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, Amy. There was a discussion during the last meeting that Emily filled me in on as it relates to the zoning code. Based on that, I thought it'd be useful for us to come do a very short presentation on the zoning code and the specific standards that were discussed last time. And we can have a short discussion as well if you'd like tonight. I do unfortunately have a hard deadline at 4:30 to pick up the kids. Just so you know. So for those of you that haven't followed, Kingston is in the midst of a rezoning. It's the first time this is happening since the 1960s. So it's a big deal. This is a process that started well over a year ago, in November 2021. It's continued throughout the course of the past year. The first draft was released in May 2022. The second draft was released in September of last year. The final draft was submitted to the Common Council back in December. And the Common Council voted last night to refer the zoning code to the Ulster County Planning Board, the City of Kingston Planning Board, and the Historic Landmarks Preservation Commission. They will also be setting a public hearing and a public comment period, which I expect will be happening in the next few weeks. We received hundreds and hundreds of comments on the zoning code throughout the past year. Some of these comments were a big picture about the vision and the direction that the city should be going towards, right? And then there were comments related to specific parts of the first draft and the second draft as well. The comments ranged from short-term rentals to housing to transportation, of course. I just want to briefly, before I go into the street design section specifically, just want to briefly give you an idea of some of the core tenets of the rezoning draft. So first, it's a desire to make a smaller incremental development possible within the city of Kingston, especially through a simplified approvals process. There's a desire to have new development fit within the context of the surrounding neighborhood, and that's the building to street relationship, right, to encourage walkability. There's a desire for a wide variety of housing types in the city of Kingston to encourage more affordability. And there's, of course, a desire to ensure that new development supports our environment and a green resilient future for the city. Street design is, of course, a core tenet of the rezoning plan, walkability and bikeability. There's a strong desire to right-size the city's current parking requirements. So what we mean by that is allowing enough parking to support business activity, but not requiring too much, which could discourage walkability and also business development. And finally, the current zoning code, there's a lot of confusion surrounding it, right? And there needs to be some clarification of the standards. So that is, of course, a core goal of the new zoning code. I'm not going to go into this, but what we got is this map here, right? So with the form-based code, there's a new system of 5 different transects. We've categorized Kingston from the most rural to the most urban. Each transect has different regulating standards. The core thing that I just want to communicate to you tonight is that the focus is on form, right? To ensure that new development fits within the context of the city's existing neighborhoods. This is what this looks like in the zoning code itself, if you were to look through it. All right, so I just want to briefly talk about Article 5, which is street design standards. This chapter describes the standards that must be followed for new development for development of new streets and the guidelines for retrofitting of existing streets. Okay, so that's a key distinction that I just want to make as it relates to Article 5. You'll see that each street in Kingston has been assigned what's called a context classification. Each of these classifications has different standards for dimensions and also for section designs. I'm not going to go into this, but if you were to go into the zoning code, this is what this looks like. So based on the your classification, there's different design standards for street trees, sidewalk width, and so on. All the things that you would expect as part of a cross-section design. One of the comments that we received especially on the second draft of the zoning code, is that there needs to be clear administration of how these street design standards are actually implemented within the city. Right, each of the other chapters in the zoning code has a very clear process of administration, right? There's flow charts of how things are supposed to work, right? Which I think is important for transparency overall. So this is something that we added in the final draft, and this is the flow chart that you'll find in the code as well. And the purpose of this is, again, ensure that there's visibility into how decisions are made. And it also gives this commission a role to play in that decision making. So, to summarize how it works, the city engineer would categorize a street design project as a retrofit or a creation of a new street. Now, if there are deviations from these standards that are described in the zoning code, the city engineer would have responsibility, has the ability to outline those deviations because of, say, existing physical constraints within the street. the city engineer would have to provide justification of those deviations to this commission. All right. The commission can then advise to reject those deviations or accept those deviations. The final say in terms of what happens, if it's a new street, it's the planning board. If it's an existing street, it's the Department of Public Works. Amy, did you have anything you wanted to add to that very short and brief overview?
No, I think that was a good recap. And yeah, we just want to help to, I guess, introduce that new, responsibility that was added in the last draft to this council and help to answer any questions y'all may have.
Any questions?
Hi. Yeah, my name is Rose Penn. I'm a city resident. Where is safety factored into any of this? Where is there a specific section that is pertaining to safety?
Amy, do you want to take that? I think it's built into how we design the design standards.
Is it
Sure,
is it going through the lens of the safe systems? That's really what I need to understand here. If it's not, then it's not. That's the lens we should be using.
So just I'll jump in here, Bartek, you can add more. So I think the design standards were drafted with the idea of making complete streets that are safe, having the standards for the width of the sidewalk, that's what's in that matrix that Bartek had on the screen, kind of what the street design elements are. I'll say this, what's in the zoning code is really about, the high level conceptual design of the street, right? So getting those elements in place that support, all modes of transportation, walking, biking, transit. And so, the big idea behind this is, coordinating land use and transportation together. So when you're in the C4, the C5 areas, which have more intense development, having wider sidewalks, having those street design elements included. That's what this is all moving towards. So this is not about a final engineering design decision. This is about the conceptual street cross section and having that compatible with the adjacent land uses.
Okay, but it just these things now, all of these new projects, especially the newer ones, have to go through this lens now. They have to go through the safe systems approach. And I'm wondering, how have we looked at that in our new street design? How have we prioritized the most vulnerable road users? Because that is clearly what the federal government is saying. That is clearly what all of the grant money is leaning towards. So how specifically are we defining what are our vulnerable road users in Kingston, and how are we prioritizing them in any of this?
I don't think that really falls into this zoning.
Okay.
That's a different level of the process. So I don't think we can expect our consultants to answer that.
Okay.
Well, one of the changes that you made, it appears to me, one of my problems was that it was referred to in earlier drafts, unless I misread it, as standards for all streets, which I objected to. I don't think that we should have prescriptive standards for everything. The fact that it's now been changed to standards for new streets and guidelines for existing streets makes me comfortable. If it's guidelines, then it gives the design engineer and the city engineer and everybody else a chance to actually practice engineering, apply the appropriate screens, if you will, to safety and to what we want to do, and move forward without being bound to a set of standards. Given in my view, there won't be a lot of new streets, so I'm not worried. And the standards for new streets are fine. I mean, I think they're pretty straightforward. So, my big objection was that it was prescriptive for all streets, and that made me uncomfortable. but it seems you've addressed that.
You know, yes. When the city engineer, when the city is retrofitting existing streets, there's a host of processes by which, those streets are designed, right? Public input. There might be requirements of the specific grant, of course, right? So this is just one of those processes that the city will now have, right? Against which new streets will be created or existing streets will be located.
I think most of us in this room have given input to some of these projects, either as individuals or we submitted comments as a Complete Streets Advisory Council. The one thing that I was curious about is if we could be, maybe the council could be notified earlier in the process if there is something that's coming up, so we could put some educated eyes on it and maybe offer commentary before it ever gets down to the tail end of the process. I don't know if that seemed reasonable or not. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Well, one thing I'm actually curious about is, are these standards, they sort of align with the NACTO
It
guidelines,
seems to look like the NACTO guidelines.
right?
They generally align.
Okay. Which is something that we've
Cities adopted.
adopted the NACTO
Right.
guidelines
Right.
for street design.
Right.
So it's kind of setting that baseline. But then, yeah, I guess, can you, and maybe you already said this, but it might have not observed it, but can you describe the process for how a street, like, if there's a new street that's being designed, what's now going to be the process that it goes through in relationship to the zoning?
Right, if it's a new street, then that new street will be part of the site plan that a developer submits to the city, right? So there might be, housing included or commercial development included within that site plan. So let me just back up here to the, here.
And actually, Bartek, if I could just jump in real quick, there's in the code, there's two different processes outlined for development. So there's what's called a minor site plan and a major site plan. And that's something that's a little different from the existing zoning where there's a new review board, a minor site plan review board for certain plans that are, a very small size. And they kind of get it, they can have a quicker path towards approval. That was one of the main goals of the code was, making that simple and easy to do small incremental infill. And then major site plans, which I believe, anything that has, new streets would, obviously be, larger sites. So these would fall under that process, which then goes through the planning board. So, it will have to, and that's why on this chart you see on the page for new streets, planning board is the final decision of approval of the major site plan. So this chart is just for deviations. So if they're, if they are following completely all of the standards of the code, they would be able to, move forward and planning board would be able to approve them. And this is just for, they want to do something different that's not consistent with these standards, then they would have to get a deviation approved, and that's when it would come to the council.
And I'm sorry, that's for new streets or that's for retrofits as well?
That's for both, actually. So that's, that this chart on here is for street design deviations.
Yeah, but the planning board is only involved in new streets, not retrofits.
So if there's a new street that's being planned by a developer, is this so that the street will be accepted by the city for maintenance and repair? Or is this considered a private street, which doesn't necessarily have to meet, it may meet certain engineering guidelines, but doesn't have to meet what the city considers an acceptable street for its maintenance? I'm a little confused with the new street, not that there's really many around.
Right, so here, what we're saying basically is that your new street is going to have sidewalks, right, of a certain width, right? We're prescribing the design of that new street, right? To ensure that it fits the priorities of the zoning code, right? Which is that our planning is no longer going to be for a single mode of transportation, right? So this is saying is that we're prescribing what the design of that new street should be, if it happens.
For any construction within Kingston, regardless as to whether the city
Public-
accepts it for maintenance or not.
If it's a public right of way.
If it's, oh, okay. I think,
Yeah.
I've just been in other places where there have been developers, especially in large housing developments, where the streets have been designed to a standard that don't meet the jurisdiction of the city.
Mhm.
And therefore, at some point in time, the residents all say, well, why aren't we being maintained by the city? And then the city comes back with and says, this street was never designed to our standards, okay? So unless you do the following upgrades, we're not going to accept it. And I'm not clear from what you're saying, if with the design, sidewalks or whatever, is every street designed to be maintained by the city of Kingston if it's new?
Mhm.
Is that what you're saying?
So these standards are for public or private right of ways. So, and what it is it would ensure that they would have sidewalks and trees. And the question about if they are maintained or not, and if they are public or private would be separate from that. If whether or not they have to follow these standards for design.
Because that would be important.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Another piece that has been a concern that was raised by former members here, I remember Andy Turner was telling us that when she was on the planning board, they struggled requiring developers to create sidewalks. And in fact, she cited a couple of examples where they gave up and allowed the development despite the lack of sidewalk or sidewalk replacement. Really, that's kind of I don't know if that comes under the purview of the zoning ordinance, but it does come under the purview of the planning board when they're doing site plan approval. So they have to be vigilant in their enforcement of what's in the zoning.
Right. The standards are clear.
Right.
And they have to be and should be enforced.
I do sort of think that some of that's because of the time, like,
At the time.
right? So now folks weren't paying too much attention. I'm thinking specifically of like Quarry Street, for example. There was a property that was allowed to not have their sidewalk on a road to a school. You know, I mean, that's sort of, I feel like that was a really bad, poor decision making and I think reflective of the time.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, we didn't have a complete streets advisory council with 20 or 15 people in attendance. I think it's, I just don't see
No,
that
it's
happening
okay.
as.
I just want you to be
Yeah.
aware of, because they,
Yeah,
Brian Slack has his hand up. You can't see it on the screen.
okay.
Hi, thank you. Just a real quick question, if we're done for the time on new streets, street retrofits, how are they defined? What constitutes a street retrofit? Is it a reconstruction, a 3R project of the street? Does street resurfacing count as a street retrofit? How are we defining it?
Yeah,
So we have,
Go ahead, Amy.
I was gonna say, in the code, it's written that says, existing streets shall mean all improved, i.e. paved streets within an existing public right of way. General maintenance, including paving and repairs, shall not be considered the retrofitting of an existing street. So it's really when the street design is changing, that's when these standards would kick in. Or guidelines, I should say.
so that's it. I mean, I had a conversation with that woman yesterday about when he resurfaces a street, and one of the things that he focuses on or tries to do, he has the resources, is to make it ADA compatible with ADA requirements. Now, I mean, Ed would have, you have to speak to Ed about that, but at least I think he's aware of that.
So one of my questions is, what is the process for a retrofit? It doesn't go through this process, right? So it, like, let's just say the city gets a grant to rehab a street or whatever. It's not going to go through the planning board. So what is the process? And also there's usually a public process that's associated with the grant project anyway, that's required by the funders. So how do we?
Well, there are no deviations, and the city is following the guidelines set forth in Article 5. Then and it's clear through the designs that we're doing so, then, there is no administrative process that would have to be followed as it relates to, this commission. Right, there's probably a public input process as part of a street retrofit. But as it relates to, this, street design article, if it meets the guidelines, then it meets the guidelines. That's it.
It seems like best practice for, if we did another Franklin or another Broadway or what have you, would to have it go through this process anyway. To have it go through the complete, even if there is no deviation. Just going through that public process and have it go through the Complete Streets Advisory Council. It just seems like that would be best practice. Probably required by funders anyway, so why not make it standard practice?
Yeah, you said it better than what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
May I ask a question regarding that? A lot of the zoning, the beauty of the zoning code is to streamline the processes and also to have designs that are based on public input. A lot of the grant funded projects have extremely limited public input. And I think that it definitely should go through the grant funded projects, and any city project should definitely go through more boards and commissions. And there have been some recent improvements with that. But if we make this separate than all the rest of the kinds of processes in this code, whereas in the case of street design standards, it has to go to the Complete Streets Advisory Council. How could we do that without making it onerous? And without making it negate this very, this code that's very much a result of public input that is not often heard.
I think what you're getting at is like, we should just have the same process
For all of the.
for this
Yeah,
or,
why have it different?
like just streamline that process. So that it's clear.
Our involvement's only when there's a variance.
Right, but I'm saying that for big street retrofits,
Yeah, but there's a public process associated with it. Can you name one that was not, did not involve a big public process?
yeah, that's what I'm saying, is
Yeah,
that it
they're
does
all-
anyway, so why don't we just standardize that? Like as part of this code, or just create, this is the best practice for all street retrofit projects. It's probably gonna be required by the funder anyway.
That sounds like a city policy opposed to the zoning.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's in the city policy or the zoning, zoning ordinance.
So it doesn't necessarily have to happen. So it's-
Yeah,
And it comes, where it comes involved,
But-
where it's involved and driven is the environmental process. Any action under secret requires a environmental process.
I mean, even it might just be helpful to like say what that process is. Because yeah, but for a street, like have what they have here for a street retrofit that doesn't necessarily deviate. So that it's clear to the public, like here's what the process is. Because I think that's really confusing for the public. Especially when a process, like for example, Broadway,
Right.
some people would say that there was not good public process on that, but there was 10 years of public process on
Public
that.
hearings, public meetings and.
And people didn't hear about it until, it's just,
People don't pay attention to the rules of the show.
it's very hard for people to know what has happened and what hasn't, and when they had an opportunity to give input and when they didn't. And so if there's a map of a process and people can see very clearly, okay, here we are. I think it's partly the public understanding the progression of a transfer from planning, from Brian's office and from planning all the way through to construction. It's very hard as a member of the public, I think, to know when are the important points to give your input. And, John, well, no, you get input and like construction documents have already been
Right.
done, it's
Right. People don't get in early enough.
It's very
Right,
costly
right,
to go back.
Right.
It's very difficult
right.
to
No, I
receive
understand.
public input at a certain point in time, but the public can perceive that as like, they didn't listen to me. But it was just not the right.
I think Bartek has to get going.
Yeah, I was gonna say we should-
Specifically for Bartek. I don't think we can stay on, but.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, thank you for listening.
Any questions for Amy? Are we done? We'll let Amy go too.
I don't know. Everybody good? Yes, we're good. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
Okay, thank you.
John, may I suggest that we sort of start at the top and do a round of introductions for the.
I was gonna go right back to the item 2 here, welcome guests and other comments. Yeah, we'll do introductions. I'll start. And I'm not sure the best way to go around the room, the way it's arranged. John Grosspol, Chair of the Council here. I guess I've been on for about 8 years, just reappointed again. I guess we'll go this way.
Okay, I'm Ella Condrat, and I guess I'm the newest member of this council.
Hi, Paul Sangus, probably second newest member, I think at this point. I've lived in Quincy about a year, and I'm coming at this from a layperson's perspective.
I'm Emily Flynn, I'm the Director of Health and Wellness for the City of Kingston. I'm not a voting member, I'm just the staff liaison.
Claudette Ford, resident, former chair of ARCAL, the Independent Living Center in Kingston, and former public works.
Bob Dennison, I've been on council for about 6 years. I'm a civil engineer with a transportation background.
I'm Kristen Wilson. I've been on and off the council since it was initiated. Forgot how long it's been, 10 years now.
Yeah,
I was a city employee, managed several transportation projects for the city. I now work at Rocco in Fort Worth.
Phil?
Hi, I'm Phil Murr, city resident, one of the 3 city legislators as well. Thanks for having me.
County.
Oh, yeah, one of the city's 3 county legislators to be.
Yeah.
Hi, Rose Quinn, I am a Kingston City resident. I was a former Complete Streets Advisory member way back in the day. I am a member of the Ulster County Traffic Safety Board. I am the former Director of Traffic Safety Education for SUNY Ulster through the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee. I also am a representative of Families for Safe Streets and a staunch advocate of bicycling and walking. And also, I lost my partner, John Lynch, on Washington Avenue on July of 2021. He did a lot of service for the city, so kind of here hoping you guys start doing the right thing by some of these people who were dying of the city. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Helen Atkinson. I'm here as liaison with the Conservation Advisory Council.
Hello, I'm John Schulteis, city engineer.
Kevin Smith, I'm a resident of Bearsville. I'm chair of the Ulster County Trails Advisory Committee. And obviously what you all are doing here is very important, not just for the city of Kingston and residents here, but also for the county, because this is the county seat. And it is becoming quite a center for active transportation.
I'm the environment active citizen.
Hi, Gustavo Salome. I'm a Newtown resident. I'm a new applicant, so I'll be information later.
And I guess we could start with Brian on the Zoom.
Yeah, hello, everyone. I'm Brian Slack, Principal Transportation Planner for the Ulster County Transportation Council, which is the metropolitan planning organization for Ulster County. I'm also the coordinator of traffic safety, which assists the Ulster County Traffic Safety Board. Thank you. Sorry I can't be there in person tonight.
Bill Reynolds?
Hi, everybody, Bill Reynolds. I'm the director of Kingston's ARPA program. First, I just want to say I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing. I know a number of you, and I know you're very conscientious and you work very hard. Thank you for what you're doing. I'm just really interested in the work that you're doing. Just by way of introduction, I served on the council for 18 years, Common Council for 18 years. And of course, during that time, I was very interested in what was going on with the Kingston streetscape. And it's very heartening to me to know that we have a group of very intelligent, hardworking people working on this very important issue. So, again, thank you. And I'm really glad to be here for this meeting.
Cheryl?
Hi, my name is Cheryl Schneider. I'm a citizen of Ulster County. I'm very concerned about how we move forward together. And I'm just listening in. Thank you so much. And I'm here with, I have somebody else. I have Alona Ross here. So we're listening together.
Sarah?
Hi, Sarah Wank. I'm a resident of Kingston, concerned about these issues. I was a member of this council some time ago. Thanks.
We miss anybody?
Nobody's waving.
Nobody's leaving. Okay. We'll open up for public comment. Have any? Bill?
Thank you, John. Yeah, thanks again for the privilege to address you tonight. So this is the first time I'm at one of these meetings. I never came to one before coming to office. And so now I recognize I'm here with some power on the county level and look forward to working with you in ways that you might recommend as far as the county. And we have some other officials from county government as well. I wanted to relate a conversation that I'm embarrassed about my lashing out at the end of, but just to set a little bit of a tone where I'm coming from this evening. Someone I just had a conversation with says, in such an old city as this, we don't need to prioritize street safety for the most vulnerable, but rather we need to use more United States fossil fuels, which we have plenty of, and make it more affordable so that everybody can drive a car, not bicycle, which is recreation. Now, I'm ashamed of how I responded to that. I happen to disagree with most of that there, but I suppose the main thing that I disagree with is that I think it is our job as a matter of public safety, as a matter of environmental and economic justice, and as a matter of national security, to prioritize making the streets safe for the most vulnerable users. I recognize this is a public comment period, so what I want to do may not work out, but I was going to ask if everyone could just say how they arrived here today, and then I have a follow-up question. I arrived on my bicycle. With the chair's permission, would people be willing to share?
Yeah, I guess if we do it quick, we've got a
What
pretty
about
full
major
agenda.
categories? What if we did everyone who walked, everyone who biked, everyone?
That's a good idea.
Sure.
So I walked, walkers.
Cyclists?
Anybody get here on the UCAT bus?
Oh, and I'm legally blind, so I can't drive. I don't ride a bike. I couldn't walk here if I wanted to, even though I would love to, because the sidewalks in Kingston are awful. And even though I love bikes, and as a former public works transportation person, they run over people like me. So, I have issues.
Thanks for sharing that.
I drove that.
Yeah, he's my chauffeur.
Thank you.
So I guess everybody else drove.
Yeah, I have an appointment across the river, so I drove to that appointment in Randall, and I came from there. But even if I wanted to bike from Bearsville, and I would bike to a meeting like this from Bearsville, I would be having to ride out on Route 28, one of the busiest and most dangerous roads. So that would be a lot to do that from Riverside at this point in time.
Oh, and public transportation for those of us who are vision impaired or whatever is non-existent.
You had a follow-up?
Yeah, and I especially appreciate Claudette and Kevin sharing a little more detail about how they got here and challenges around that. How many of us, some of us currently depend on others for transportation, but how many of us have ever had a period in our lives where we depend on others for transportation? That's right. So I guess that's the point I wanted to make today, that we depend on each other to keep the streets safe. And we all have situations where we currently might depend on others, and we have children who depend on others. And we have folks who can't get around because of the infrastructure, who depend on us to make it so that everyone can be safe on the streets. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I think Tanya, you had your hand up.
Okay, thank you. I have comments on two things. The very brief, that I'm really glad that we've got the form-based code, the NACDA design guidelines to be following that is huge, but as we have it now, it's just an administrative action by the mayor for grant-funded projects and other city projects, and to have something in writing is going to be huge to be able to say this is how we do it here, whether it be the DOT or a local project, if we have sidewalk districts or whatever, it's going to be really good to have it in writing because these are really important aspects. We need street design that's much better than we have. And I personally have been, that's all, I'm going to just keep that tight, but we've got 2 new deaths. The most recent one was Sarah, and she was my neighbor. She lived a couple blocks away from me. I live on the top of Wirt Street, and she lived toward the bottom, right around the corner from Wirt Street. And I got to know her because she was a walker. She was a real asset to the neighborhood as somebody who didn't just get in their car and drive away and come back later and go right back into their house. And she was walking in the center of the road going uptown. The school bus was on its way back to the depot. The school bus driver that killed Daryl Savage was also on their way back to the depot on Wilbur Avenue. That was a Bernie bus. This was Ethan Allen. The other bus company is First Student. All of them are independent companies. The city of Kingston does not run their own bus company. These are for-profit agencies. They're very ready to face lawsuits and very defensive in the way that they approach it. I'm sure that I feel like it's quite likely that the other bus drivers are not going to hear the details of this from Ethan Allen because they're on the defensive, and we don't have laws that really hold drivers accountable when, like in this case, the driver approached, and the driver was, I'm familiar with the video, the driver went up, Spring Street, stopped there, and going up from Broadway. And the pedestrian, Sarah, was walking from the bridge towards McEntee. And this is a 4-way stop sign, and the bus driver stopped. We do have the instance of it being a pretty unsafe vehicle, being up high with the way that the fronts of buses are built. So we've got problems with the way buses are built, which may be solved in the future with more electric buses and being able to have engines in the back. We've got not very good training for drivers. We've got a very old bus driving force. I found out through this that one of my son's bus drivers was 90 years old, an Ethan Allen driver. This driver was 77, and we don't retest drivers to determine what the reaction time is or any of the other myriad of things that happen to us as we grow older. People don't even factor that in because we're all so used to driving. We don't think we ever have to stop driving and then rely on people for rides anymore, let alone taking a job. any rate, we've got some, this is a reflection, this crash is such a reflection of so many things that are wrong in the way that we do things. That intersection is not well lit enough. But that bus driver was on their way back to the depot. They stayed a full stop. If they had looked at anything except for if cars are coming from the right and cars are coming from the left, if they had been thinking in their minds, let's check for pedestrians, then Sarah would be alive today. So thank you very much.
Anybody else? Rose?
Hi. So first of all, I also want to thank everybody here for coming and offering your time. You know, I know that it's not easy, sitting on boards myself, and, you know, I certainly backed away from this one a while ago. I have regrets about it, that's what I have to tell you. So I really, you know, just kind of coming off what Phil said about how this is a system that really needs to have everybody kind of interacting to make it work properly. You know, that's not just like happy talk. That's actually what the federal government is telling us we have to do, right? So that's why I keep mentioning things like the Safe Systems approach. Okay, so any of these projects, anything that's coming on board now has to go through this lens, right? So of course, when we have these, and so, for example, the person who was just hit, Sarah Edwards, God rest her soul. So it's easy to say, well, what does the city have to do with that if it was the bus driver who did that, right? But that's actually really a backwards approach according to the Safe Systems approach. Safe Systems approach demands that we look at the entire system that is in place that created that scenario, okay? So we have the same situation with this intersection over here, which I'm sorry, but all right, I'm gonna keep my voice low. I have talked to people time and time again, including John, about the condition of that intersection. And I've been met with like kind of rolled eyes and being told that the parts aren't there, as if that was the only problem with that intersection. That intersection is fraught with problems. It always has been, I will say that much. But you have taken a scenario where that intersection that was already bad, you've made it much worse and much more confusing. And this is for the cyclists and the walkers. And now we have a fatality. Now we have a fatality. For over a year in that intersection, you could not see if you were walking, if there was a signal for you in your favor.
Are you talking about Green Coast?
The one right over here by Rite Aid.
Yeah.
The right over here by the line. This one, right down the street from City Hall. Okay, right down the street from a high school. The students literally could not see if they had a green light for over a year. And when I brought that up to the city, I was dismissed and told that there's no parts. Now it is clear that intersection is still a disaster. We're talking about putting a park there. That is not the Safe Systems approach. The Safe Systems approach says you fix that intersection first. You go to the community and you find out what's wrong with it. You take that chance that you're going to get yelled at, and you put the resources aside and you hold that project up until you're sure it's safe. That's what the Safe Systems approach now says we have to do. And I am waiting for this county and for this city to get on board with that. So I'm gonna, it's hard for, as I've said many times, like, I thank everyone for giving me the liberty to talk, because I know that like having this much motion in a room like this is not a common occurrence. But you guys need to see what happens when we don't take care of this, okay? Communities are getting destroyed. Drivers, that bus driver is also destroyed, by the way, right? It might be a really weird thing for me to say, but her life, if she has any conscience at all, and I'm betting that she does, is also really screwed up. And we could have done something, people. We can't keep coming after the fact. Complete Streets needs to look out for the people here.
Thank you, Rose.
Can I just say, ask one quick, I feel like we've already moved on to new business.
Yeah.
So I just want to be really clear, my understanding is that the cyclist test was on Pine Grove, not in the intersection.
Not in the intersection, but that entire intersection, like, so me and Ella and Rashida, who almost witnessed the crime, I'm sorry, I shouldn't call it crime, but almost witnessed the crash, came right after the crime. Said and this is also like, not just me, like this is everyone saying, like, people making that right turn right there are doing it too fast. They're doing it too fast. What are we doing to stop? Like, stand there. I really, like, everybody in this room, go over there at 3:30 in the afternoon at the highest time. Do it standing there with a stroller, okay? Do it standing with a stroller like some people have to do when they're waiting for that light to turn.
Okay,
And tell me you don't
I think we need
feel
to
the
move
same.
on, Rose.
Okay, well, all right, thanks.
This,
I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, let me just say that there's active investigation going on.
I know.
The investigation team, part of the district attorney's office, state police, state DOT, with this latest bus crash. I mean, these things are not being ignored. If there's anything that rises to the level of criminality, I'm sure that will be detected.
John, there won't be anything that rises to the level of criminality. I'm sorry, but I'm just gonna, so if that's what we're waiting for, that doesn't happen because that's not how the law works. You need to understand
And
that.
that's,
So it needs to be done through design and through response.
And if we think back on the other crashes, we waited, and then we did nothing. Because we waited, and it calmed down, and everybody wasn't looking, and then nothing was done. This is an
well, I
opportunity
think
to address
Ella
these
said
things.
it well I think it was an email that, we've had 100+ years to get to this point, and now we're trying to undo it. And we're not going to solve it here in this meeting today. I'm quite sure, based on conversations I've had with the police chief and the mayor, that Kingston is not ignoring these things. We're not ignoring these things. Common Council's not ignoring these things, and we need to figure out a way to move forward with it.
And my next opportunity to comment
let's-
next month, I'm gonna argue those points, because I disagree.
Would it be okay if I made a comment, John?
Yeah, and then we're going to move on.
But I think there's also a comment, one more comment.
Would you like to go
I-
first,
I-
please? You're a Kingston resident, please.
I have time for my introduction, so I can probably speak there, so go ahead.
Okay, I'm wondering if, just on a tangible level, can I ask a question if I was at a Ulster County Traffic Safety Board where there was a presentation by a representative from the governor's Traffic Safety Committee on the safe systems approach and how it's being adopted as formal policy by federal DOT. And I'm wondering if the Complete Streets Council has had the benefit of getting that presentation or something like it. Brian's a member and coordinated that meeting of the Traffic Safety Board. I found it incredibly inspiring to see that the federal government, DOT, and I'm trying to remember the other federal entity, has really engaged on this. It's a paradigm shift. And to your point, John, this is going to take decades. And I really believe that the many stakeholder groups that are engaged from different facets of this, there's very talented people, there's people of goodwill, and there's people who care, even if they don't have the knowledge. But this is going to take a long time, and it's going to get more difficult before it gets easier. It just is. And there's going to be more tragedies like what we've witnessed in the last few weeks. I'm just praying that the next one isn't in Woodstock, where we're just getting our Complete Streets Committee off the ground and haven't even had a chance to do a project yet. So that's my suggestion for what it's worth.
You had something to say?
Well, I've got a few reasons that I'm here. It's, I walk here and I went through that intersection. And one thing that led me to apply for this council is that there are like new projects here and they're all short of the safety standards. Like they put push buttons on all the intersections to cross, and all the cars are like coming here down from uptown. The bike lane on Broadway had a green, but the pedestrian didn't. So if I would have to like press the button, wait 2 cycles, and then be able to cross. I think that those push buttons, for example, leave pedestrians as an afterthought. Everywhere is the same, and you would say, okay, if the pedestrian has the crossing opportunity, then at least all of the other ones should be red, but that's not the case. So you still have to run for your life because cars wants to make a turn. Another example is the Franklin renovation, but for me, it's really dangerous to cross that to get there because, and the crosswalk in Broadway, there's always cars parked on the side of the crosswalk. The city isn't doing anything. I know, I was told, reported through 311 app, and the person told me that they've done like 300 tickets, but still, there are cars blocking the intersection. There should be more safety measures. And I have like many other more, but the last one that I would say is that I've read from the mayor's newsletter that the city received another grant for doing an education campaign. To me, that falls short of, like drivers are going to be driving, it's like, it should be by design that they were saying. I think we should educate the engineers and the people involved, take into cities that have good walkability. I went to Virginia recently, and it was mind-blowing how the street, with more traffic, more businesses, people were stopping. Like as soon as you put a feet on the crosswalk, people will stop and not get upset. Here, I walk my dog, I can talk about it later. I have a daughter that I push a stroller. Every time that I cross the linear park, I'm terrified. I take my phone out because cars don't stop. And I feel like I need to record it and be ready for that. Wait for the worst. So, yeah. Kind of spoiled my introduction with the reasons I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
I don't believe we received a new grant for a transportation education campaign, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just to clarify.
Okay.
So we did a transportation education campaign that I presented last month. But just want to clarify. Second, Brian Slack sent me the National Roadway Safety Strategy presentation. I'll send that out with our meeting minutes. Or not, we don't do meeting minutes. I'll send that out after this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
I'm wondering if that grant might be the YMCA grant. Didn't the Y just receive it?
Get a bicycle grant.
Not.
Tom Book got a bicycle grant.
Yeah,
It's like an
I think
education.
that might be the one, the second one you're thinking of. Yeah.
Can I just make a comment about, there are those 5 E's that I think Complete Streets Advisory Council has been working on implementing over the last 10 years, or bringing into. It's hard for you to see how far we've come, and yes, maybe some things fall short, but we've come a long way. And compared to other cities in the Hudson Valley, we've come a long way. And so it is hard to see that, but and engineering, obviously, design is one of those E's. People can help me out, maybe Brian does an education, enforcement,
Engineering.
And what's the other one?
Engineering.
If I said engineering,
Engineering, enforcement, and education.
Education, yeah. So those are
All together.
yeah. I mean, I hear what you're saying, that, we did a lot of work to get the council to fund an education campaign that was related to the new infrastructure. I do, from my point of view, engineering and design is the first order of business, right? That's where we can get the most change. But as we have implemented these new projects, I do really see the value of education and just.
They stop you when you step onto the crosswalk, and it's because of education. It's not because they're.
And culture.
It's culture and education. They know that if you step in a crosswalk, people stop. It's part of when they get their driver's license, they know it coming out of the box.
We just don't have the
We
culture
don't
in
do
New
that.
York.
We don't have that culture.
Yeah, but if that's true.
And
Because of design, like our roads are designed in a way that encourage bad driving.
but I would say that the design in Maine is just as horrible as it is in New York, and Maine drivers are so much nicer.
Yeah, in all fairness, there's way fewer though.
Yeah,
And so what we have going on right now is, because it's not just us, you know, I was looking at the statistics, you know, Poughkeepsie is suffering its own little surge. They're actually, it's more pedestrians in Poughkeepsie. Kingston is very unique with the cycling deaths, I have to say. There hasn't been one in Albany in it was one in Albany in 5 years.
yeah.
So our cycling deaths are extreme here in Kingston, like recently, comparatively speaking to other places. You just, unfortunately, it may actually open us up for more funding.
We also don't need to detail, there's enough details about the cycling crashes.
I'm
I
gonna
mean,
keep bringing, I understand what you're saying, Bob, but I'm gonna keep bringing everybody back to that safe systems approach. Because that is really the new way that we're analyzing this. And within that context, and you have to look at the education of the drivers. You have to look at the city's responsibility, maybe saying to school bus companies, look, there's a standard that you have to adhere to. Tom Hulk is offering this education program through GTSC. You know, something a legislator I don't know for certain, but maybe on a legislative level, you could say, listen, if you're gonna operate your bus in Kingston, you gotta go through this next level of safety training. It's important to us,
Okay,
you know, so that's how safe systems approach. That's all I'm saying.
all right, I want to move on. We gotta be out of here by 5:30, because the city has a lot going on this evening. Oh, I wanted to look at old business. Last time we met, we brought up this vegetation management issue. And I was wondering if we could kind of have a subcommittee. Maybe Paul could take that on as a project.
Sure.
What I kind of had in mind was we need a way to collect the information, identifying locations, what
We're
the
trying to
issue
get
is.
control, like we're talking like where it's obstructing.
Line of sight issues,
Okay.
vegetation that's growing out into the road. I mean, I could sit here and rattle off a long list just from my walking around.
Well, I might pick your brain. To get
And
started.
I think if we can make this, one of our safety campaigns, try to deal with this. Some issues have been taken care of. I no longer get smacked in the face by tree branches on Early Avenue. And, that's handy, especially at night. But there's definitely other areas that can use attention. I think we had some good success with the streetlight campaign. We made it very clear to the town council that there was a safety problem. And then when the economics of the streetlights came in, it was an easy sell to get them to approve switching over to the LEDs. And I think we could, take that same approach here with the vegetation management. So there's a lot of bad intersections where you just cannot see around the corner. A lot of cases, it wouldn't take much to fix that.
All right, so we're talking about vegetation just generally across the city where I.
Or it's interfering with
Okay.
transportation issues.
Because I remember we were talking about the bioswales, there was an issue there, but then it got worked out.
Yeah, well,
But so I was also, when I was at the city, we were having a discussion about green infrastructure management and like rail trail management. Is that something that's still, Julie was kind of taking the lead on that, so.
that's a little different spin, I think, from
Different?
what I'm looking at. I'm primarily focused on the transportation issues, intersection, sight lines.
What
If I
about,
may, you can't see street signs because the branches and bushes are.
Yeah, that kind of
That
thing.
kind of thing. So it's more of a directional signage. And if somewhere in there, there could be something that would upgrade the signage so that the reflectivity is a little bit better than what it is, because I know from past experience the different levels of sheeting for the signs. And if you up the reflectivity, you see better, there are less accidents, it's better for pedestrians, it's better for cars. So, you know, it's that kind of thing. But right now, getting the branches from in front of the street signs will be extremely helpful.
Yeah, a lot of this is really the property owner. I don't know if I want to call it neglect, but it's property owner responsibilities. I'll let it go with that without pointing fingers. What I'm thinking is if we bring this to everybody's attention, maybe we can get some traction. People realize that they're causing a problem before we have a crash or a fatality. Just as an example, in and around Pittston School and Bailey School, there's at least a half a dozen intersections that I'm surprised there hasn't been a collision or fatality because of the sightline issues. Anyhow.
So, can you just answer that question or from the city? Is there still like a green infrastructure management plan?
For the rail trails? You're talking about specifically?
Yeah,
I
and
understood
it was
there were
also like the
couple of these-
bioswales and the.
So there's a draft management plan for the rail trails that you and I all worked on. There has not been updates to that I know of.
Okay.
There
I was just
are
curious.
2 to 3 full-time positions for some maintenance of specific locations. For example, the roundabout, City Hall, I don't know the list of all the locations, but there's at least 2 full-time, if not 3, maybe I think the third is not filled yet. They, to my understanding, do not clean up the growths around the intersections like John, I think, is referring to. My understanding, John Schultes, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that if we notify this through the 311 app or through other ways, that if the homeowner hasn't cleared it, that the city will tell them to. That's my understanding. I don't know more than that at this time, but I can always find you answers.
Ed Norman knows the answer, and I think you're right.
And this might be a way to get these things noted in 311. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
if all of a sudden there's I don't know what the number is, 100, 1,000 problem locations. And I think that would raise the awareness level.
So the homeowner is notified, and if the homeowner doesn't do it, because that's usually public space enforcement. So if the homeowner doesn't do it within a certain amount of days, are they ticketed, fined, and then does the city come in and do it and charge back the homeowner?
What I understand
I
is
can't
that-
speak.
Like which sidewalk, if there's a sidewalk that's dangerous, the city does have the power to go to direct the homeowner to correct it. If they don't, the city has the power to do the work and add it to the tax bill. Now, there's a huge political, as you know,
Yeah.
you know, so what is the city willing
Well,
to do that is another.
Well, coming from cities that were willing to do that, I mean, that's the best way to make it work.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, it's difficult, but in most cases of public issues like that, I did have, of 3 cities, I did have a force that could go out, do the inspection, give the homeowner a warning that said, hey, you gotta clean this up, gotta do whatever. If you don't, you know, this is what could happen. And if they didn't, we had to send in a crew to clean it up because of safety reasons, health reasons, or whatever. That charge was then sent back to the homeowner either through the tax lien or through a direct bill. But it did get people's attention and they began to listen.
Kingston used to have, when the first Mayor Vallow was in office, he had a task force to go out and deal with these kinds of issues. I don't think that was continued.
Would you guys like me to ask DPW how much is being enforced?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
That would be
That'd be good.
useful information. And if, you know, if we can raise the awareness level, maybe we can make this problem go away. That would be nice. Okay. Do you have any volunteer helpers?
Well,
I mean, I think all of us can just, you know, refer things.
Yeah, if you see something, send it along, I suppose.
Trying to set up some central repository.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm really looking
Well,
for.
I have an idea for one thing. There's an app called Felt where you can make your own maps. So you can save it, you can share it with people. So that's one idea, yeah.
I guess
Add
it feels duplicative, why not submit it on 311?
Right.
it. Yeah.
That's what I suggest, and if you see that it's not taken care of, why don't we collect that information and bring that to the mayor?
Do you get a printout from 311 of the types of calls that come in and which ones refer to various agencies, like which ones would come under the purview of complete streets like this vegetation?
Someone does, I don't have access to that.
Yeah, but if we got that on a regular basis, it would give us an idea of what isn't being addressed. And, or how long some things have been on there that have been reported more than once, twice, 3 times. It's like, what's going on? And it could be a legitimate reason.
I can find out what the back end can report.
That would be great.
And whether they fixed the call-in option, because before, if you called it in, they were not keeping a record of it.
Really?
Yeah, that's why I was looking for some kind of database where, we had some tracking and accountability. Go back and look at it.
Yeah, but you also have to keep the data.
Okay. I guess we sort of killed new business already. Poor choice of words on my part here.
Did any of the other, I would appreciate it if it was just brought this offered to the committee to say anything, because it's such an important topic.
I missed the beginning of it.
I'm sure that nobody wants to say anything, it just wasn't presented as an option, it seemed to me, to talk about the new business. Sorry to interject.
For the
I think
fatalities?
she's asking if council members have anything to say. But
I'm
other
not
than
sure
what we
if
already discussed.
Yeah, I don't know if there is, but if somebody's got something to say, I guess we could. I think this latest Kingston Wire article's got more information in it than anything I had seen before about,
Yeah, one thing, I think, so I live I basically saw the emergency vehicles. From my back of my house for this, the more recent one. The pedestrian, yeah. And so, I live on Adams Street, which has a similar sort of extremely steep downhill that's been shut off. It's no longer a through street. And I imagine it was because of similar sort of concerns, just with safety there. And if the bus was coming up spring, it had to have been going quite fast to get up there. So I just wonder if there are things that can be done. How you have streets that aren't accessible by trucks, like is there a street that maybe it's not ideal for something like a bus to be coming up that street? Are there limitations to?
Because, part of my concern, it would be interesting to know. It would be interesting, and I don't know whether the traffic safety board will do it or somebody will do it. I'd love to see an analysis of these crashes. When they're done. I mean, right now, everything that we do is speculative. We don't know what happened.
Right.
And we don't really have the data. I'd love to see both of the recent crash evaluation. Somebody's gonna do it. There's gonna be a crash evaluation for both of them. I'd love to see.
Is that like an FOIA,
Well, there's a whole formal process for it. And you look at, contributing factors, what happened, and then you can, use some data to make some decisions about what the right thing to do is.
Brian's also got his hand up.
Oh.
Hi, yes, I can make just a brief comment on that point, Bob, and then unfortunately I have to leave the meeting. The details of every crash are unique in most cases. And when a crash occurs, it creates a form called the MV-104, for those who aren't aware. We've been talking about these forms at the Traffic Safety Board for some time now. The MPO, my office, has access to a geographic information system software that is produced by the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles that allows us to access those forms and also create crash diagrams. Within the form itself, there is a description provided by the officer responding to the crash, describing all salient details of the crash. Weather conditions, time of day, light conditions. Again, there will be a diagram of some sort, witnesses, etc. And it will typically provide enough information to conclude as to the cause of the crash. So when we have fatalities or serious injuries with vulnerable road users, the TSB is presently considering a method or a process to discuss the particulars of those crashes, just as Bob described. We have not ironed out those details. I mean, I just got a dump of MV-104s from the city of Kingston today. In my role as the coordinator of traffic safety, those forms are provided to me. They are not labeled. They're very difficult to search, and they would need to be redacted before they're publicly shared, because there is contact information for all members involved in the crash, including the witnesses, telephone numbers, license plate numbers, addresses, etc. So I did review the latest dump. The crashes the fatalities that have occurred, I do not have those crash reports. As soon as we do, we will review them internally and begin to determine and ask the question, was there an engineering deficiency or other, systemic problem that needs to be addressed by a responsible party? So that's something we're working toward. I mean, that is something to a certain extent has existed, we would hope, in the past, but this is a process by which the TSB and our 12-member board will begin to look at that to make sure that those questions are being asked and that the responsible parties are following through on these. Is it, a perfect response to the concerns that have been raised at this meeting? And we had a TSB meeting on Monday, and we received some of these comments as well, and they are not fun to listen to for anyone. And I'm sure they're not fun to deliver by our members and volunteers as well. But we are beginning to have a process here to at least review the details of those crashes. So I'll provide more as I become aware, and have as the process evolves. It is, again, it's sensitive information because there's sometimes litigation, and as public employees, we may not be allowed to speak in great detail about the crashes, particularly if they occur somehow within our jurisdiction. Sometimes we're told to not speak on the issue. I know that's happened in the past with city employees. So we're trying to muddle through some of those issues, and we're actively seeking guidance from our partners at New York State DOT and the New York State DMV on the topic as well. So I hope to be able to provide more insight as time goes on.
Thank you, Brian.
Yes.
Elizabeth? I think you're muted.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I had an emergency with a client. I had really hoped to be at the meeting today. Talking about gathering information, Complete Street, engagekingston.com, there's a Be a Road Hero traffic safety page. Maybe we could do a page there that people could do a form. Like when we had the Franklin Street project, there was a comments section, you registered and you asked questions. Maybe that would be an easy, already built site that we could do whatever it is we want to gather and add it there. And then you could say to people, go to Engage Kingston, and there would be, a header saying, come here and report whatever it is. Just an idea.
Again, I recommend to use the 311 system that's already set up. That's the best way to report the vegetation issues.
I thought we were talking about other than vegetation, though, like other areas, like other issues besides like street signs not being visible and things like that. Is it just vegetation that you wanted to gather?
Well, there's that project, but any of those other items could be reported through the 311.
And who gets, would we get the 311 information to Emily? Is that?
I don't know the answer to that yet. I will find out if we have access to the back end.
Or they could provide it to you and you could weed it out or something. Okay, okay, great, thanks.
We'll find out more about that system. I don't know the answers to that yet.
Yeah, I don't. Other than the fact that I get follow-ups for things that I've reported.
You do.
I did.
That's good.
Just,
I'm sorry, one more thing. The reason I brought that website up is I don't know how many people in Kingston know about 311. I actually, moved here 2 years, it'll be soon. And someone who lived here for now 10 years had never heard of it. So the website might be something that is easier for people to get to than downloading an app that's a 311 app that they don't even know about. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents, so.
We got about 8 minutes left here. Well, is there any other new business anybody wanted to bring up?
No.
No?
I think we have 8 minutes, so I think we
Good.
should cover administration.
Yeah, we should probably move on to administration.
You might I would just add that for the next meeting, not this meeting, we want to put the sidewalk district conversation on the agenda.
Well, so.
Well, the next meeting is.
Next meeting is only that agenda.
Next
Great.
month is a
Yep.
sidewalk task force.
Yeah.
Fine, good. Never mind.
You're coming to that too?
Oh, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
Is that this meeting or is it separate?
So that's the same time and place. It's what are we at the second Wednesday, 4 to 5:30, but it's the sidewalk task force. I actually will not be available next month. So I'll have to figure out how to have someone do the Zoom for you.
Okay.
But,
The sidewalk test will be a Zoom meeting?
in the same way that this is, we have to live stream
It'll be a hybrid.
anytime, open meetings law.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, behind it.
I think that was supposed to be like a subset of us.
Yep.
I think, I can't remember if I officially volunteered, but I did in my
I
head
thought,
to help.
I don't remember.
Not run the whole thing, but, like,
You need to be a participant.
I will participate, but I will also help steer it if you want that help.
definitely. That was off on my streetlight issue. Well, you guys were working on the sidewalk issue, so you've got a lot of, history that I don't know.
I do have a new business item that you probably should know about as Complete Streets members, and that is that the Safe Streets Act did pass the Complete Streets funding expansion. It did not pass lowering the threshold yet. I was misinformed on that. However, that is a really serious push that we're getting involved with in the next legislative session. In fact, we're going up on the 23rd to Albany to lobby for that. So just so you're aware, Complete Streets programs have gotten a funding boost. It's not a huge one. It would be a lot nicer if it was a huge one. Not entirely certain if it affects groups already existing. It might, but it definitely is something that new groups can build more and more Complete Streets groups.
What part did not pass?
So the part where they're lowering, so they were asking to lower the spending threshold
Oh, yeah,
on
okay.
capital
Right, I get it, yeah,
projects. And that,
Right.
as of yet, has not passed, but that one actually still has a good chance. Unfortunately, the one that seems to be dead in the water, which really is upsetting to me, is the one where victims can actually speak directly to DMV judges and have some effect in cases. Unfortunately, some of our very powerful hospital administrative lobbies actually got at that one, so it's really disheartening. But the other one, the one where the threshold gets lowered, hopefully we may be able to get it passed. And that's a big deal because then, it could open up Complete Streets review for, smaller scale projects that have a lot, like the fruit is much more low hanging, but there's lots of things you can do on the small scale with a repaving project, for example, in terms of safety. So,
Okay, thank you.
EJ's got it.
The next thing that we should talk about is,
EJ's got it.
I think she had her hand up. I think she took
Yeah, I
it,
think that-
put it back down.
A vice chair. Do you have anybody that would be willing to volunteer for that role? Which, for the most part, just means that you fill in if I'm not here. And in all the time I did it for Bob, I don't think I filled in once, so. No volunteers? Should we nominate somebody?
I nominate one of our new members.
I would too.
Ella, there we go. So we have a nomination from the floor.
I nominate Al.
The second,
I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And I guess the last part of this, we should really go into executive session on the new applicant.
Can I suggest we welcome them to introduce themselves? That's usually what we do really well anyway. The people who apply, we welcome them to introduce themselves. And then we go into executive session to decide if we want to recommend them.
Yeah, and yeah, and then we have our some follow-up things for next meetings and so forth. Page 2. Yeah, page 2.
Emily, if you have to mute me for the executive session, please don't forget to bring me back because I missed the end of the last meeting when y'all went to executive session. I know I can't vote, but since I'm on Zoom, but I missed the end of.
Thank you for that, EJ. I'll try to figure that out properly.
Okay.
Next week.
Well, I guess right now we'll go into executive session, so only those that are.
Wait, please, John.
Waiting for introduction.
Yeah, can we have them introduce themselves?
Oh, you want to do that before? Okay.
All right, my name is Gustavo Salome, originally from Venezuela. I've been in the US for 10 years or so. Became a citizen last year. I live in most of the time in the city of Brooklyn. I've done a lot of cycling there. I go through like a lot of the years intersections. Moved to Kingston like 3 years ago, pretty much right before the pandemic. We were super lucky. Got married in Kingston, got a first baby. My family takes a dog for a walk. We like to walk over places. We push the stroller. We understand the dangers of pushing the stroller in the cities. I love cycling in the city and even like taking the bike outside the city. Yeah. I honestly, I see a lot of issues like I mentioned before. And I've never been a member of a council, but I'm interested to try to make the city a little bit better.
Yeah, thank you. All right, thank you for coming, folks. You're welcome to come back after we're done.
All right, so I'm sure you want
So does Gustavo come back or do we?
So you,
How do we?
usually I email them, let them know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, there's got to go through the rest of the process.
Okay, do you know the process? So they recommend it to the mayor. If the mayor accepts it, the mayor usually does, the mayor secretary will send you a letter of appointment. And you have to come into City Hall and sign a very official book, and then you would join us and be on the commission or council.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Just let me know if there's some more information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you. For executive session, yeah, EJ, I think I do have to mute and stop video. So, but then I'm not ending the meeting. So I think that I will have to, you won't be able to see us or hear us, I hope. Cool.
Who is on the sidewalk?
Hey, EJ, we're back if you could hear me.
I think we kind of self-selected.
Nobody yet.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and so everyone here voted in favor to appointing Gustavo.
Recommending his appointment to the mayor.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Okay.
Good. Yeah. Okay, so next month's task force, my thought is that I will need someone who can do the Zoom. I can see if I can have staff, or as a formal staff member, do you want to pick them up?
No,
Okay.
because I'll mess it up and it's open meetings a lot and I don't want to mess that up.
Okay,
And I don't have the computer.
yep, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And it may have changed since you're here, actually.
And since,
I'll see if I can have staff. I don't know if I'll see the whole time, but I'll see if I can.
my chauffeur may be out of town, so I may be on Zoom.
Alright.
If
I
I
will-
like it, then.
I will plan on being there.
So, well,
I'm
all
interested
of
in
us,
learning more.
yeah, I guess it doesn't have to be all of us, but who will be on it?
Well, I'll be out of town, but I might be able to Zoom.
I would like to.
There you
Yeah.
go.
And are you familiar with what the goal of it is? Or-
Sidewalks.
Yeah.
Passable, passable, walkable,
I think the
accessible
goal is
sidewalk.
to figure, I think it's to
You want to talk
come
about
up with
how
a
we
plan
want- right, how do we
for
want sidewalks?
a sidewalk improvement district.
I think that's where we're gonna end up.
Wait, did you decide sidewalk improvement districts?
I already have, but,
I think
know
that's where we're gonna
As
end
the
up.
count, but I guess I feel like this council should decide that. So
Yeah.
Right.
there's a few documents we have that compare a couple different options. I feel like
Yeah.
if
Can we
nothing
see
else, yeah, I'll send you the document that I'm thinking of. If nothing else, you guys should make a motion and
Right.
sort of formalize which direction you're going to possibly recommend to the common council. This is my recommendation.
Yeah, I got the sense that the mayor is willing to take political heat to move this forward, even though he's coming up for reelection.
But not.
I talked to Ed Goldman about it last night. Ed is not enthusiastic about a sidewalk district because he's afraid that he won't be, he feels under-resourced. He's worried about.
But that's the
being able to
point.
deliver. Well, that's what I explained to him. But then he worries about the fact that his head count's not up where it should be now, and how's he gonna get these extra people, it's
Well,
normal stuff.
there's nothing that says that it can't be contracted out and mounted by public works, is it?
No. That's not a bad way to go too.
That's the way I.
But that's, to me, that's secondary to the concept.
Right.
It isn't the resources, right?
So my understanding is that there's a few things that we should review, these different options, so I can facilitate that discussion. I am a bit biased that I am a bit biased, I'll say that now.
I am too, because
So, but then we can discuss it as a group but this isn't an actual Complete Streets Advisory Council meeting. It's a task force of the council, so do we make a motion? Like, would we just discuss it and then we would come back to the next Complete Streets Advisory Council and make a motion to recommend something?
Present your findings.
As someone who's not super familiar with Robert's rules, I would suggest that you make it a Complete Streets official meeting and have an agenda and have it be recorded the same exact way. Why not? But then the agenda is only the sidewalk task force.
Okay,
That's my recommendation, and you keep it consistent.
okay.
Pretty reasonable.
Yeah, it's good recommendation.
So will you share with me the different things and then?
The different resources. that I have.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. You were talking about enforcement. You mean if you don't take care of the tree and it dies and that kind of thing for the sidewalk district? Is that what you were talking about?
No, the sidewalk improvement district would be to assess a fee across the city to property owners. It would be based on your frontage, sidewalk frontage, and then that fee would fund a sidewalk program. It's something they do in Ithaca. I think they do it in.
I'm aware, I know what it means. I know that you're supposed to have a fee, but there was also the ones that I read, Ithaca and was it the one in Oregon? There was also regulated, if you don't take care of your sidewalk, that then you get an assessment, like a fee or a ticket or something.
No, this is to change that system. It's to change, I think you should come to the next meeting
Right.
and then we'll.
No, I will. He was talking about regulation, so that's why I was trying to figure out what he was meaning.
The heavy lift is transferring the responsibility for sidewalk maintenance from the property owner to the city.
Yes, it's basically making the sidewalk a public,
Kind of like a street.
it's like how we pave the streets, the
Right.
city would redo the sidewalks instead of having it be the property owners.
And then so there's a liability issue, we have to talk to somebody about,
Well, that's the other thing I was thinking about, because of course, yes, I live on Franklin, and so we've just had our sidewalks redone. And John knows about this issue. They did an uneven level on some of the bluestones. So they're aware of that. I wrote emails, all that, because if someone trips and falls, it's not my fault because that sidewalk was just laid. I had to go through all that with them. But if I'm being assessed a fee for my frontage, then that excuses me from any liability of any accident on the sidewalk. That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, this is such a deep conversation. Come to the sidewalk task force and we'll.
Yeah, no, that would,
Yeah, just
with
that's what I'm.
that's fine. Okay, great.
I'm sorry, I have to be somewhere in 5 minutes.
No, it's fine. That's fine. We can talk next month. Got it.
we adjourn?
Yeah, unless somebody's got another announcement.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Thanks, Bill, if you're still there. Bye, everybody.
We're waiting.